All right, and we're going to go ahead and start. As always, my name is, you know what? Let me plug in my little light here to get a little more brightness in today's session, and then we'll start over. And we're here, as always. My name is Michael Skillen from the CommonTime Education and Outreach team, and CommonTime is your all inclusive home for simple, quick, and easy access to the arts and arts education. Our mission is to take learners, artists, arts organizations, educators, and individuals and seamlessly combine them in this global digital community that we've built here at CommonTime.online. Today, we are back for another episode of our Wisdom Wednesday webinar series. If you're not able to attend, this will be available in its entirety on our blog. So let's get started. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about assessment, and more specifically, we're going to talk about using GRASP task in the arts classroom. First, I'll tell you what the GRASP task is, and then I'll tell you why I like it. So first off, GRASP is an acronym, and it stands for Goal, Role, Audience, Scenario, and Product. Why does this help us outline our assessments that we're going to be using in our arts class? I love it because it provides an opportunity for students to build really, really concrete meaning with their learning. And also, it gives them the opportunity to connect their learning more to real life. And some of the other subjects like math or science, it's easy to see the connections with real life. It's easy to see the connection that decimals have with real life because you deal with money. Everyone deals with money every day, oftentimes even our children. When you're learning physics, it's easy to see how physics connects to real life because with physics, you're often using real world problems like I threw this ball, or that famous question in all the internet jokes. If train A is going 40 miles per hour and train B is going 70, those questions, those are all rooted in real life, especially when you look at the sciences and the maths. Why shouldn't the arts be the same way? When you're using GRASP tasks, you're giving your students a concrete goal or allowing them to assign one for themselves. You're giving them a role. So your students are not sixth grade choir students. For the purpose of this task, they are professional singers that are doing a job. You're allowing your students to outline the audience, which is allowing them to respond to their learning in a different way and make some concrete connections as to who is going to be receiving their product. You're outlining a specific scenario so your students know exactly how they will be achieving their goal, and you're helping your students outline what their final product is going to be. So what I want to do is take you through 4 different areas: knowledge and understanding, skill, creative thinking, and responding. These 4 areas may go by different names in the arts curriculum that you are using, but in their essence, I think they're pretty standard across the UK, the IB, US curricula, the Cambridge, the Ontario standards in Canada. They're pretty standard throughout. So we'll break down each one of those areas and talk about how you can implement a GRASP task in those different criteria, standard areas, what have you. So I'm using the IB objectives when I talk about this, but like I told you, these are pretty standard in their essence, maybe not in name, but in essence across the different types of ways to teach music in the different curricula, to teach music, visual art, dance, theater, what have you. So when you are assessing knowledge and understanding, the IB says that you are looking for students to demonstrate awareness of the art form study, including vocabulary. I consider this basic knowledge. Watercolor is this. A paintbrush is this. An easel is this. A pirouette means this. Backstage means this. Stage left means this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The second part of knowledge and understanding is you want your students to be able to demonstrate awareness of the relationship between the art form and its context. So in one of the examples I give here, knowing what cubism is the first level. You're knowing the art form studied and you know some vocab. But knowing that cubism was popularized by Pablo Picasso in the mid 1900s, now you're adding the knowledge and understanding that that art form has a context. Knowing that cubism is used by visual artists to create works of art, context. Level 3 of knowledge and understanding is you want your students to be able to demonstrate awareness of the links between the knowledge acquired and the artwork created. So not only is cubism a thing with vocabulary, but cubism was popularized in the mid 1900s by Pablo Picasso. There's your context. And I can use cubism to create this. That's level 3. Knowing something, knowing it in context, then knowing that you can use it. Let's design 4 grasp tasks around this. So remember, goal, role, audience, scenario, product. For music, I created a sample grasp task. Your goal is to improvise a short instrumental solo and transcribe it so that others can read it. You can do this freehand on staff, or you can use a program like Noteflight maybe. You could even use a program like Chrome Music Lab to notate these your improvisation. Your role, you're a musician and a composer. Your audience is classmates, teachers, people in the community, people that listen to music. The scenario is students will improvise a solo using the first 5 notes, which in band, I'm using band as an example because I'm a band teacher, C, D, E, F, G, or, transposed accordingly, the first 5 notes. You will also use quarter notes, eighth notes, and quarter rest. Why is this important? If you have knowledge of the first 5 notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, and quarter rest, what they sound like, what they look like on paper, you have all that knowledge. You know that that knowledge and vocabulary in the context of music relates to written music. Then you know level 3 that you can create using those things. You should be able to perform a solo, and you should be able to write it down, notate it verbally using ta, ti, ti, or do, re, mi. You should be able to write it down and perform. The students will then be able to notate what they have played using written music on paper, using a program like Noteflight, using Chrome Music Lab, verbally audiating it making a recording of that. We can differentiate that. And the product is a recorded solo and some type of transcription. So what are we testing here? What are we assessing? Are you a level 1? Are you aware of the first 5 notes and rhythms? Can you call them by name? Can you finger them? Can you see them? Can you write it? Level 2, are you aware of the relationship between the vocabulary and the different things we learn in the context of making music and improvising? You need to know that in music, there are things called notes and rhythms. The notes you know are the first 5 notes, C, D, E, F, G on trumpet, or C, D, E, F, G, clarinet, C, D, E, F, G on glockenspiel, xylophone. You also need to know how to play them. You need to know what they look like on paper, how to talk about them. You also need to understand that all of this knowledge can be used to create music. Then level 3, when you write your transcription, when you audiate your transcription, when you Chrome Music Lab SongMaker your transcription, you are understanding that all of those different things in context can be used to create something which you have made. So now your students aren't just music students, they are professional musicians and composers creating concrete understanding through a real life situation. Okay. Visual arts. The sample I created for knowledge and understanding is the goal is to curate a set of pictures that are of the cubism style. Your role is as a gallery curator, real career. Your audience are art lovers, people that like to look at art. The scenario is students will collect a set of 10 images of the cubism style. 5 need to be older images. maybe actual paint on paper or pencil, something more acoustic, if you will. And 5 need to be newer images. Maybe these are digital images. You could leave this up to the student. The product is a poster board, a presentation, a PowerPoint, etc., showcasing the 10 images, who created them, the year they were created, and what about the images makes them cubism. Why is this cubism? What are we testing? Level 1 of the knowledge and understanding. Are you aware of what cubism is? What makes something part of cubism, and any vocabulary that's included? Level 2. Are you aware of the relationship between cubism and the time it was created? That context. Do you know about Pablo Picasso? Number 3. Do you understand that there is a link between what you know about cubism and the art you were showing? You know what cubism is, you know the context in which it was created, and you know that cubism can be used to make art, new art. Dance. Here's our sample grasp task for knowledge and understanding in the dance world. Your goal is to teach a short routine, less than 1 minute, to a group of other students using a particular set of moves or positions that have been studied. I'm not a dancer, so I won't go into detail there, but using some content, some set of moves, positions, etc., put them together and teach a choreographed routine to the other students. Your role is you're a dance teacher, real career. Your audience are your students in your class. We're going to be a little more specific with this audience because it has a specific outcome. You got to know your audience. The scenario: students will use a set of moves and positions that have been studied during this unit to create their own routine, 30 seconds to a minute, that they will then teach to the rest of the class. The product is a dance lesson. What are we testing? How do we know from that grasp task that they have knowledge and understanding of the moves or positions they learned? Level 1. Are you aware of the different moves and positions studied and their names? Do you know what first position, second position, third position, pirouette, and a jump? Do you know what those are? Using the vocabulary, can you demonstrate it? The second strand: are you aware of the relationship between the moves and positions in the context of your lesson? You're using your knowledge to create something and share it. The knowledge is just a tool, it's not the end goal. Are you aware of that? Then level 3, are you aware of the connections between the knowledge that you've learned in context and the final product being your lesson? So are you aware that there's a link between the moves you learned and then the outcome you created? I like that. The knowledge is a tool, not the end goal. I always think, I used to know this group of architects in graduate school, and they were talking about the differences between architects and engineers. And it kind of reminds me of these 3 strands. Architects have knowledge of what buildings should be like, but architects don't want to pick up a hammer and a sledgehammer and run a construction site. That's that knowledge being linked to creation. That's that third strand. The architects mostly live on the first 2 strands. Theater. Let's make a grasp task for the theater world. Your goal is to write and perform a monologue. I have soliloquy written in my notes, but a monologue using Shakespearean English. Your role: you're an actor and a writer, real careers. The audience are your classmates, your teachers, maybe a camera, people who love theater, or people who watch television, people like that. The scenario is students will write a short solo performance using Shakespearean English and perform it, less than 1 minute. The product is a written script and a performance. How are we testing knowledge and understanding with this grasp task? Are you aware of Shakespearean English? Do you know what it is? Do you know some examples of the words? Can you list the words you're using? Are you aware of the connection between that language and Shakespeare slash that period of time? Are you aware that the reason that Shakespearean English is important is because it was popularized by this famous playwright who lived, drama teachers, don't come for me, from this day to this day? Do you understand? Shakespearean English has a context. If you start speaking Shakespearean English today, people will look at you like this. Come again? Or if you're at a Renaissance fair, they may welcome you with open arms. Then level 3, are you intentional about how you use the language in your work? Are you aware that there's a connection being made between knowing something, knowing the context that that knowledge lives in, then using that? Level 3 to me is knowledge as the tool. Okay. All right, let's move on to our second criteria area. Once again, I'm using the IB criteria or objectives, but they're pretty standard across a lot of the different curricula for teaching the arts. Now we're going to talk about using GRASP task to assess skill level. The IB says that when you're assessing skill, students need to be able to demonstrate the acquisition and development of the skills and techniques of the art form studied. Okay. In the music, vocal technique, trumpet technique, in visual art, using a camera, brush strokes, paper mache, in theater, vocal inflection, body movement, in dance, performing your moves, the performance. Can you do the skills? The second strand is that students need to be able to demonstrate the application of skill to create and present or perform arts. I'm coming from the music world, and in music, you sometimes can have players who are extremely technically proficient. They can play scales up and down, but when it comes time to make music, when it comes time to put all that finger motion, all that muscle memory in the context of a performance, that's what takes much, much more practice. People will often say learning the notes to a piece of music is 20% of the work. 20% of the work. We can all sing, to the left by Beyonce, word for word, note perfect. But unless you can get on that stage and do this and put that skill in the context and apply it to creating a performance, you'll never be Beyonce. Maybe if I had a wig. How can we do this? I keep this sample GRASP task the same for all of the arts. Your goal to perform or present a completed work of music, work of visual art, a work of dance, or a work of drama. Your role, you're a professional musician, a professional artist, a professional dancer, or a professional actor. The audience are teachers, students, community, people who like to watch the art that you're doing. The scenario is students will perform in a music concert, a dance recital, an art showcase, or a play, public or private for any of these. The product is a final performance or presentation. How are we testing skill? Can you show me that you have gained skills and techniques in the given art form? Can you play? Can you move? Can you paint? Can you act? Second strand, can you put those skills in the context of a performance? Not only can you demonstrate brush strokes or can you demonstrate the functions of a digital camera, but can you use those skills to create art? Similarly to the knowledge and understanding section, strand number 1 is, do you know what to do? Strand number 2 is, can you then use that skill? I'm thinking of boxing. We can all stand in the mirror and practice jab, jab, uppercut, 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 bob, weave, bob, weave. But until you get in the ring and you can string those skills together into a fight, it means nothing. And that's what the IB is telling us here. The third strand, or the third objective or criteria in the IB, there is also a similar one in the US curriculum. There's a similar one in the Ontario, Canadian curriculum, and there's a similar one in the UK curriculum as well. Creative thinking. This is what the IB says about creative thinking. Strand number 1. Can you develop a feasible, clear, coherent, and imaginative artistic intention? Can you make a plan? Second strand. Can you demonstrate a range and depth of creative thinking behaviors? Can you document or show that you went through a process of plan to completion? Did you change your plan? Did something happen that caused you to shift gears? Did you have to make edits? Did you try something that didn't work? That's the creative process. Similar to the scientific method, you've got a hypothesis. You need to be able to prove that you tested your hypothesis. Then strand 3, demonstrate the exploration of ideas to share artistic intent to the point of realization. Did you follow through to the end product? So you developed a plan, you tested, reworked, you participated actively in that plan. Then strand number 3, your plan ended in you creating something. How can we create a grasp task for this in music? Here's a sample. Your goal: to add Foley music / sound effects to a silent cartoon. For all my Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, old Mickey Mouse lovers, Foley music and sound effects are the type of music that you hear in Tom and Jerry. All those percussion sounds that emulate walking and screaming and door knocking. All of the sounds that are in a cartoon, this is what we're talking about. Because as we know, none of those sounds are real. I'm actually doing a unit on this with my students right now, as it's Ramadan time, and our students will not be listening to or creating music. But I found this little workaround where we can create Foley music and listen to sound effect examples without, my students having to break their fast, which is very important to a lot of them. The audience: cartoon watchers. The scenario: during Ramadan, when students will not play or hear music, they will learn about Foley music and sound effects. Then they will choose a silent cartoon from a set list that I've compiled. They will identify the sounds they need. They will find the best way to create the sounds using whatever materials at their disposal. They will then record the sounds, and then they will put it together with the video to create a final product. Then they will have to watch each potential video of the 6 set. They have to choose one. So there's some creative thinking and planning in that, and justify why they did or did not choose one. Students will have to make edits to their original plan given and journal the entire process. So some of the edits we haven't gotten to this part yet, but some of the edits that I'm predicting is maybe we make an eating sound like this, but then we listen to real people eating, and then maybe it doesn't work. We need a better sound, and then we have to document all of that. The final product is a short cartoon where all the sounds created by us. How is this testing creative thinking? Strand 1. Did you create a clear artistic intention throughout the process of this project? Did you write in your process journal that you are going to choose a piece, a cartoon? You told me how you chose it. Then you told me that you were going to watch it. You're going to identify the sounds you needed. You're going to test different sounds till you found the best one, then put it together. Can you show me that that was your intention? Strand 2. Did you showcase different options in your journal? Did you show that you were trial and erroring, being creative? Did you show me where you needed to create a raining sound? You tried this, but it sounded more like hailing, so you did this. Did we see some type of action there? Then number 3, did you journal and follow through to the final product? Did you go through your trial and error and finish it? Here's a visual arts example. The goal is to paint a self-portrait. Oh, and I didn't say this. The role for the music is we're Disney sound engineers. And the another note about the scenario, I'm talking more about this one because I'm actually doing it. The scenario that we have is that I am a Disney artist. I have drawn this cartoon and I have animated it. Now the last step is our team of Foley musicians and sound engineers need to complete the cartoon. So that's their scenario, is that I have drawn 6 cartoons and we need to complete each of them one at a time, but most classes will not do all 6. I have a couple classes that might do 2 because they're fast, but most will do 1. Back to visual arts. The goal, paint a self-portrait. The role, you're a professional painter. The audience is yourself. You're making this for yourself. The scenario, students will paint a self-portrait. The plan is to conduct artist research by learning about different self-portraits. What's a self-portrait? To explore different styles of self-portraits that they find, to select a final style that they will use, then final product. Before painting, they'll do artist research and find examples of self-portraits. Maybe you can ask your students to find 3 examples of a self-portrait that are very different from each other. Then identify the style of them. And it doesn't have to use concrete vocab, depending on your age group. Maybe you can say this one, uses shapes instead of human looking things. This one doesn't really even look like a human. And this one looks like a photograph, things like that. Then you have them sketch out their self-portrait with a pencil, trying to recreate the 3 styles that they have identified. Then you have them create a criteria for how to decide which one to use. Some that I like to use are, will this be difficult to achieve? Do you like it? Can you complete this in enough time? We only have 5 weeks till summer break. Can you do it? Those are some of the criteria that I like to give my students, in hoping that this can lead them to creating their own criteria later. Then you need to choose the final style and then give us final product. And the product is a self-portrait. How are we testing creative thinking? 1, did you create a plan? I kind of gave them a little bit of a plan, but were you able to put that plan in your own words and notate it in your process journal? When your students are new to grasp task and new to this type of creative thinking, and especially documenting it, I found it useful to create the plan for my students and then allowing them to edit the plan and then eventually make their own plan from scratch, where you just tell them, I need this, what's the plan? Okay. Did you showcase the different style options and explore them? So did you go through the 3 styles that you selected, and then did you sketch them out just with a pencil? Did you try them out, see what works, what didn't? Were you making creative choices? Then 3, did you journal your experience all the way up until the final product? Okay. And I only gave a music and a visual art example here, but hopefully you can see how they, can be extrapolated to the different areas. Then our last criteria, our last objective, our last standard area is responding. And the IB defines responding as constructing meaning and transferring the learning to a new setting. Can you put what you learned in the context of chemistry? Can you put what you learned in the context of moral education, which we have in the UAE? Strand number 2, can you create an artistic response that intends to reflect or impact the world around you? I kind of dilute this to Can you provide an inspiration from your art? Or do you, if your art is not inspired by anything, do you understand that art has inspiration oftentimes? Looking back to some of our other grasp tasks, you're making a self portrait. Do you understand that what you look like, how you feel, is the inspiration to your self portrait? Do you understand that the art that you're creating is a response to this stimuli? Is that the right word? And then strand number 3, can you critique the artwork of yourself and others? And I usually, in the younger grades especially, like to provide some criteria for them to give themselves feedback, like, do you like what it looks like? Do you think the person worked hard on it? Does it look like it took them time? And maybe another criteria could be, is it what it's supposed to be? If we're drawing landscapes and, Steve draws a picture of Bugs Bunny, I would hope that students notice that in their feedback. And then I created a general grasp task that could be used in any of the arts. And your goal is to write a newspaper article giving a review of a performance or a presentation of a piece of art. Your role, you're a journalist, real career. The audience are people that read. That's pretty simple. And the scenario is students will write a self-critique for a fictional newspaper, let's say the Mr. Michael Times, that hits a few points. I have decided that I want their critique to connect to the art or art learning process of another subject. So they need to say that the self-portrait that Mr. Michael painted reminds me of Diary of a Wimpy Kid, because in his book was kind of a self-portrait, and we read that book in English class, and he was writing about his own experience, which is kind of like a self-portrait but with words. That would be great if a student said that. The writing needs to connect the art to a language class. I wrote that in my notes, but I think I was kind of redundant there. Students need to identify an inspiration for the art or performance, or an inspiration for the creation of art, and reference it in their review. So they can say, Mr. Michael's self-portrait was created because I'm feeling sad, and that's why he used all blue. Connected to some type of inspiration. And I also accept this answer. When you have those students that say, this wasn't inspired by anything, I created this because my teacher told me. You need to write that. You created an artistic response that was reflecting the world around you. The world around you was me telling you to paint something, or me telling you to play this music. That's important, and that should be said. Then students need to give a critique of the art being reviewed, some type of feedback. You can even give your students a criteria like I explained earlier. Like, did you like it? Did it complete the task? Things like that. You can help decide and help work with your students to create it. I like giving a criteria for feedback in the beginning, especially with students that are new to IB, and a lot of our students are new to art class and music class in general, that they don't often have it at some schools. I start with giving them a criteria for feedback that we usually create together, and then I allow them to create their own criteria for feedback. Then the final product is a paper, a PowerPoint, or a video or audio recording of their work. So to review, we like grasp tasks. You notice how I said we there. We like a grasp task in the arts because they help students build a concrete meaning and connection to the art they're learning by connecting it to achievable goals and real life roles. We are not choir students. When we are writing feedback for a concert, we're newspaper writers, we're journalists. We are not seventh grade music students, we're sound engineers creating sound for a new Disney movie. These are all real life things, and parents love it too. GRASP is an acronym that stands for goal, role, audience, scenario, and product. And last but not least, on April 30th, CommonTime is bringing to you our first ever Educator Summit, where we have 5 educators from around the world speaking on hot button topics in education, like differentiation in the arts, creating a more inclusive classroom by embracing all languages and cultures, teaching arts in the age of misinformation and using art to enhance research skills. Research is a big topic in the IB, and all teachers are expected to hit research skills no matter their subject, and the arts can actually help with this. Teaching improv theater out there for all of our theater practitioners, and also arts advocacy and visionary leadership. That talk is being given by a lady who's been a teacher, a principal, a district level administrator, and also a state level administrator who worked with the governor and got laws and legislation and things passed and supported about 6 million students in the Washington State area. Her session is all about making your program matter, learning how to change things at the state level, even including legislation, and how to get more support for you, your students, and the teachers. This is on April 30th at CommonTime.online. My name is Michael Skillern, and we'll see you next week.